Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. Artificial intelligence, some tout its benefits while warning of its dangers. Lawmakers today hoping to get a better understanding of this emerging technology. The Senate holding a first ever classified briefing. NTD's Melina Wisecup reports from the Capitol. So Melina, what did you gather from the senators after this closed-door briefing? Any idea how lawmakers plan to approach this?
So honestly, it was all over the place because this is a very new topic for Congress to tackle. Lawmakers repeatedly said they feel like this will be very difficult to regulate. And even if it is regulated here at home, it's almost impossible to prevent malpractices from happening abroad. Now, other concerns that lawmakers have on the impact here at home, they say they're concerned about how it will impact children, how the data collection will go, or if there's any incorrect data inputs that could create problems down the line. Now, Senator Rubio focused a lot on the economic impact, saying that it will replace high intellectual jobs. And he repeatedly said that over and over again. I asked him if this is such a concern for him, is there a way that Congress could prepare for this and possibly cushion the economic impacts? He said the only solution is really to prep the workforce for a transition. So here's what Senator Rubio had to say about his concerns as well as others.
I think one of the things we're not talking about is how disruptive it will be economically. AI will do to higher educated workers in some fields what globalization did to workers in American factories. It's going to put some people out of work. It'll create new jobs, but it's going to eliminate some jobs.
Anything that's harvesting massive amounts of data, you can always potentially use the data incorrectly. The AI does operate off a set of patterns, and the patterns can be wrong, right? So what's the validation of AI-related content? There's tremendous intellectual property concerns.
So the senators were briefed today in the first of its kind closed-door briefing on this issue. They were briefed by the Director of National Intelligence and the Deputy Secretary of Defense. The overall goal here was really to get all senators up to speed on how AI is actually being used here in the U.S. And some senators we spoke to said that they feel they learned a lot more from this briefing than they did other types of briefings. For example, Senator Roger Marshall says that he actually learned that we're actually leading in the world when it comes to innovation in this area. But that raises the question of intellectual property theft, because we know that's been a big issue with Chinese Communist Party officials. The DOJ has taken some action on that as well. I asked Marshall if, he feels the administration's doing enough to prevent this from happening. He said no. But this is why Senate Leader Chuck Schumer says Congress needs to take action to make sure the U.S. stays #1 in the world with this new tech. Take a look.
So I'd probably be more concerned about China's ability to steal our property than what they're going to innovate themselves.
Congress working with the private sector to make sure that we innovate way ahead of everybody else, but at the same time that there are safeguards so that innovation doesn't get out of control or be used for negative purposes is very, very real as well. It's going to be one of the hardest tasks that Congress has ever faced.
So Schumer has been pushing a bill that he says does have bipartisan support. But from the senators that we spoke with, we asked about this bill and the likelihood of it passing during this Congress. They said that they are very not familiar with this specific bill, but they say they do have an open mind. They say they just need to learn more about how legislation could actually move, as well as just learn more about the overall role that artificial intelligence actually plays in our nation right now.
A House committee today investigating the origins of COVID-19. Lawmakers questioning the authors of a scientific paper which dismissed the lab leak theory soon after the virus broke out. NTD's Arian Pazdar has the highlights from today's hearing.
That the drafting, coordination, and publication of proximal origin and downplaying the lab leak was antithetical to science.
On Tuesday, the Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic investigated this scientific paper published in Nature Medicine in March of 2020. At the very top, it states, "Our analyses clearly show that SARS-CoV-2 is not a laboratory construct or a purposefully manipulated virus." Shortly before the hearing, Republicans released this report. They say it proves that the main objective of the 2020 paper was to dismiss the lab leak theory. It includes transcriptions of telecommunications between the scientists, which lawmakers received through a subpoena. One of the transcriptions appears to show one of the paper's authors writing, "Our main work over the last couple of weeks has been focused on trying to disprove any type of lab theory." The report also shows that days before publishing the paper, the authors still seemed sure the virus couldn't have originated in nature. Republicans say that changed after a conference call with Dr. Fauci.
What happened within that 3-day period between the conference call and the paper that all of a sudden you did a 180?
We examined the genomes more closely. We looked at other coronaviruses, and there was some new data that came.
Democrats also released a report on Tuesday morning, coming to the opposite conclusion as Republicans. It mostly focuses on proving that the conference call in question was planned by one of the scientists, not Dr. Fauci. It also contains excerpts from previous testimony in which one of the authors talked about that call. "I honestly don't remember Drs. Fauci or Collins even chiming in on the call itself." That's why the Democratic ranking member on Tuesday said the Republicans on the committee
and wasted time on this hyper-partisan investigation, which, by the way, has ended up disproving my Republican colleagues' own theory.
He called on Republicans to change course so the committee can focus on preventing future pandemics. Ariane Pastar, NTD News.
And with the NATO Summit underway with a whole host of issues on the table, we now turn to NTD's Iris Tao, who is tracking the meeting on the ground from Vilnius, Lithuania.
As NATO leaders gather here in Vilnius, Lithuania, membership to the key alliance dominates discussions at the annual summit. President Biden today held a one-on-one meeting with the president of Turkey, who on the eve of this summit cleared the path for Sweden to join NATO.
The summit is reaffirming our commitment to NATO defense. We're close allies in NATO, and hope we can make it even stronger. So welcome.
The meeting also comes as the White House this morning announced that it would move forward with F-16 sales to Turkey, saying that a move
that this is in our national interest, it's in the interest of NATO that Turkey get that capability.
And another major topic here that's at the top of the agenda is Ukraine's efforts to try to join NATO. But that push seems to be stalled. A summit communique agreed on Tuesday pledges to extend an invitation for Ukraine to join when, quote, allies agree and conditions are met, adding that the alliance will support Ukraine in making reforms on its path towards future membership. But Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said in a tweet today that, quote, certain wording is being discussed without Ukraine, adding that it's unprecedented and absurd that there's no clear timeline for Ukraine to join. But President Biden today said that he stood with the NATO's language.
We agree on the language that we proposed, that you proposed, relative to the future of Ukraine being able to join NATO. And we're looking for a continued united NATO.
President Biden is set to meet with Zelensky on Wednesday. On Wednesday night, is set to give a major speech. And the topic, the White House says, would be U.S. response to the most significant challenges of our time. Reporting in Vilnius, Lithuania, Iris Tao, NTD News.
A month ago, the PGA shocked the sports world with the announcement that they would be merging with LIV Golf. Today, their agreement was examined in the Senate with concerns about sports washing. NTD's Dave Martin brings us more.
I'm in Washington today with the PGA's deal with the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia that funds LIV Golf was being scrutinized by the Senate. Now, Senator Richard Blumenthal, who's chair of the Subcommittee on Investigations, said this was about sports washing regarding the Saudi government and their atrocious human rights record. But I have to say he was somewhat in the minority about whether our government should be involved in private business negotiations and whether there were better opportunities to deal with the Saudi government.
We're here today talking about golf, but we didn't have one congressional hearing over sending hundreds of millions of dollars of advanced weapons to Saudi Arabia. There was no expression of outrage. Instead, 67 senators voted against my proposal and voted to continue selling arms to Saudi Arabia.
Now, the issue of whether this violates antitrust laws was discussed, though the witnesses that were there today from the PGA, that is COO Ron Price and board member Jimmy Doon, stressed that the deal is just an agreement, that an agreement will be reached, implying there's not much to examine. The hearing actually took several turns as Senator Roger Marshall thought we should be investigating more pertinent matters.
I got to tell you, no one back home has asked me, hey, what's the Senate think about this merger? At the same time, every day somebody asks me, why were we funding viral gain-of-function research in Wuhan, China? What was China doing when they hosted the Olympics but a few years ago? But sports washing, trying to wash their enslavement of hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of Muslims.
This line of questioning was continued by Senator Josh Hawley, but he wanted to know why the PGA has done business with China despite their atrocious human rights abuses and whether they'll continue to do so.
Okay, so you're telling me that you're not going to do any further business in China, you've got no contracts with any Chinese entities, and you're not going to operate PGA events in China?
We have no plans to continue that series at this point in time.
Ultimately, Senator Ron Johnson suggested they wait until the PGA's agreement was finished before scrutinizing this deal anymore. Meanwhile, Senator Richard Blumenthal said the hearings would continue, though no dates were set. I'm Dave Martin for NTD News.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.